All right, can everybody see my screen and hear me okay?
Your presentation went away, Greg.
It went away.
Yes, it was there and then it wasn't.
Okay, just a moment. No, sorry about that. Try again. How about now?
Perfect.
It's still on the screen?
It is.
Okay. If at any point it disappears, just let me know. Okay, so as Lex mentioned, our topic today is going to be an introduction to artificial intelligence. This is a very, very broad and kind of, in my opinion, complicated and hard to understand topic. So there'll be quite a bit of ground that we'll cover today. This won't be exhaustive, so there's so much to cover here. This is just a little bit of an intro. Um, and don't worry about having to memorize all the things I talk about today. There is going to be quite a lot that I go through, but hopefully this will at least teach you a couple new things that you didn't know before that you can then use going forward. And as Lex mentioned, this program is funded by the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, RBC, and Entente. So I want to start talking about a bit broadly about what AI is. AI stands for artificial intelligence, which is an advanced computer technology that is designed to help people with various tasks. AI learns from human information. So the things that we give it takes this information. So the most common one is AI reads everything that's online and uses this as its knowledge base for what the world is like. AI also has very strong pattern recognition abilities, which is what allows us to make AI very, very personalized to us. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But it is also good for forecasting. And then finally, AI makes plausible guesses based on this pattern recognition and the information that it learns from people. One big thing that might seem obvious, but that is easy to forget when you use AI, and that it is a tool and not a person. So AI does not have emotions or feelings like a person does. It is designed to seem like you're talking to a human being, but in reality, it is just a tool, the same as Google is. It just seems a little bit more personified or anthropomorphized. So I want to talk a little bit more about this point about AI being a tool rather than a person. So AI, as I mentioned, does not have emotions. So when you are using AI, and I think about things like ChatGPT, where you ask it to do something for you, if it doesn't answer in the way that you want or doesn't provide you the help that you need, you can keep asking until you get the right response. So there's no point at which AI will get sick of you asking it your questions, or it'll get annoyed with you or any of that kind of stuff. It'll just keep doing until it gets it right. And so you don't have to worry about offending it, upsetting it, or, tiring it out from all your questions. AI does not understand life like we do, so it has its insight into our experiences from everything it reads online. And gives it a kind of a good idea of what it is to be a human being, but it doesn't really genuinely know, which is why it struggles with certain questions that are based on certain elements of the human experience. So it'll do its best job to guess when it gives you information, but it's not going to be perfect. And so if you encounter sometimes that it doesn't really understand what you're talking about, it's because it's ultimately a computer program and it's just doing its best to try to guess what you're talking about. AI follows rules given to it by people. So for every AI service that you use, there is a company or organization that runs it that has certain rules that dictate how AI runs. And it follows those rules very, very strictly. There are sometimes exceptions when people are able to get around some of these rules. But once these become known, the company will generally do its best to try to um, cover that base as well. So um, AI will usually approach certain problems in a very formulaic way, just the way a computer would. So it might seem that it's, thinking for itself, but it really is following a set of rules that have been given to it by the creators of the program. And as I mentioned, AI is very strong at pattern recognition. So I will talk about this later, but a type of AI is a computer program used to make weather forecasts, which take in previous weather information and use that to then predict what the weather will be like tomorrow or a week from now. And so this is that pattern recognition ability that's particularly strong for AI. And one important note is that you are ultimately in control of when and how to use it. So from this presentation, I hope the takeaway message is to know more about what AI is rather than feeling that you ought to use it or that this is something you have to do. It really isn't. Um, and hopefully talking about some of the risks and some of the tips for how to use it safely will get you to feel a bit more comfortable with it. Um, but it is ultimately up to you to decide when and how you're going to use AI. And if that's not at all or just a little bit, that's totally fine. AI has become a really, really big topic in the last few years with the advent of programs like ChatGPT. But AI as a term and as an idea is a lot older than that. AI is present in quite a lot of areas already, and I want to go through some of those areas where it has been around and a lot of types of AI that you might have already used or gained benefit from. The first is on your phone. If you have autocorrect, so when you are typing a message and you have a typo and your phone automatically replaces it with the word you were intending to type, or maybe something, a close variant of it, this autocorrect is a form of artificial intelligence. Here, it's creatively thinking about not just what you typed, but what you probably intended to type, given the last few words in your sentence, and also what keys were maybe nearby that you meant to press that you missed. So it does all this to try to predict what you were trying to type. Voice typing or dictation services, where you speak into a device and it types out what you're saying, is also a form of AI. Being able to detect that speech and then translate it into words is another type of AI that has been around for quite a while. Whenever you use anything like GPS, Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, and so on, information that is given about a best route, so the fastest way to get somewhere, or personalized locations, so saving a certain destination that you use quite often, is another form of AI. And so here you can see where this pattern recognition lends itself to being very allowed to be personalized to you. So if you keep putting in the same destination several times into your phone or wherever you're typing in the destination, it'll eventually learn that you travel there quite often and might suggest it. So as you start typing in the address, or even just as you go to try to find somewhere, it might already suggest that location. So, for example, when I go to work, because I keep typing in that destination, when I look up the schedules for buses, it'll know that, I'm there every week and it'll start suggesting it. So that's personalized to me based on the pattern that it recognizes in my usage. Spam filters and automatic scheduling for emails or for meetings on email is another form of AI. Again, learning your usage and learning what sorts of emails are often spam to then block future spam emails is another type of AI. We also see it in things like Netflix, YouTube, and other streaming apps when it gives you a suggestion for what to watch. This is based on what you have watched previously, and it's best guess at what you will find interesting so that you continue watching, which is ultimately the end goal for a lot of these apps is to get you to watch more. If banks ever send you fraud alerts, this is based on their own internal AI. So they can learn what sort of patterns you typically engage in your spending. And if you deviate from those patterns, that might get flagged as potential fraud since it isn't the way that you normally use your cards. You also might have seen when you go on different websites, especially ones that are e-commerce, so buying things online, you might see a little icon like this robot down here in the corner, which is a customer service chatbot. So before ChatGPT and all these AI services came about, these were normally human agents. Nowadays, AI will do a sort of intake. So when you first click that button, the AI will try to understand what exactly the problem is. And either if it's a simple or common issue, it'll solve it for you then and there. Or if it's more complicated, it'll forward you to a customer service representative. So those are some of the older forms of AI. But why is AI such a big topic today? And this is because in the last few years, there have been a lot of advances in the technology that have made it much more powerful than it was before and much more useful than it was before. And it is also rapidly advancing. So when ChatGPT was released and became a huge thing, I think it was about 2.5 years ago, since then, AI has come a very, very long way. And every few months, there's some new advance that's being made, a new version that comes out that can do more. And so it's very, very hard to stay on top of what AI can do because it is so rapidly advancing. There's a lot of money being put into it. And so, therefore, a lot of new work being created. AI is also being integrated into a lot of existing services. Like I mentioned, those customer service bots that, whereas it was a person before, now it's a robot that then leads to a person. Um, and in some cases, it's not even noticeable. So, for example, the algorithm that YouTube or Netflix uses to suggest things for you to watch, the suggestions will look the same. So it's the same sort of screen where it says, here's what to watch next. But the actual program that determines what you might find interesting might change. So whereas before it was based on just the genre, so if it sees you watch a lot of rom-coms, it'll suggest a rom-com. The model now might be, taking into account the genre, the actors, the production company, all the sort of information to then give you a personalized result. And then last reason is that AI is also quite a controversial topic. So I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth. There's a lot of discussion around AI nowadays. And so I have a couple questions that you might have heard other people talk about or that you might have thought of yourself. For example, one of the biggest ones I hear is, will AI replace people? So that's a concern that a lot of people have with AI replacing various jobs or being able to do various tasks. There's a lot of concern around this. And there's no, um, I guess the simple answer is no, not really. It can't really do everything that people can. But people are concerned that in certain areas, it is replacing the work that humans used to do before. There are a lot of privacy concerns around AI usage, which we'll talk a little bit about today. A lot of people are worried about how correct AI is, and the simple answer to this is no, it is not always correct. So you have to be careful when you're using it for information gathering. People also worry about surveillance and AI listening in. And so this is related to those privacy concerns as well. Whenever somebody asks me what AI is, this is a very, very hard question to answer in a few sentences because AI is just so, it can take on so many different forms. It's hard to know what it looks like all the time. Some common names you might have heard of are ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot. These are three of some of the biggest AI apps or services. And ChatGPT is, I think, one of the very first ones that came out that really made it such a big topic. But these are just one form of AI. There's multiple different ones out there. So I want to go through a couple different types of AI. Again, this is going to be quite a lot of information on the slide, so don't worry about remembering this. There's no test on this, but it's just to give you an idea of what's out there. I'm going to talk about the type of AI on the left. In the middle, I'll give you some examples of services that are this type of AI. And then on the right, I'll talk about what this type of AI is used for. And just a note that sometimes one service can take on more than one type, and I'll talk about this in a minute. So the first type is conversational AI, and these are AI bots that you can talk to, and they will reply to you similarly to how a real human would. So these are things like ChatGPT or Alexa, which give you natural conversations. So if you were to ask it a question, it isn't like Google, which spits out a bunch of results or just point blank tells you the answer. It'll maybe repeat your question back to you, affirm the way that you asked it, give you some information about it, and then maybe ask a follow-up question. And then you can also just use it to have a conversation. So you can talk about the weather or talk about your plans for the weekend. And it'll really replicate the way a human would respond to you. Not in a perfect way, but much, much closer than a program would a few years ago. There is also something called generative AI, and it is called generative because it is used to generate new things, usually images music, text, videos, and so on. Some of the early programs that did this were Dolly and Midjourney. ChatGPT and a lot of other ones are able to do that now too. So you can ask AI to create an image of something and it'll make it for you, as long as it follows the guidelines that the company has set out for image generation. Predictive AI is what it sounds like. It is used to make predictions. So I mentioned weather forecasting and fraud detection as very simple and quite old types of AI, but these use previous patterns to make predictions about future outcomes. Robotics AI are things like Roombas, which are those automatic vacuum cleaners, which you sort of leave at home and they roam around your house vacuuming, and surgical robots. These perform physical tasks. So whereas most other forms of AI are websites that are purely digital. You can also see it in physical forms, such as robots. So a Roomba, for example, will learn the layout of your house. So the first time it goes around, it'll bump into chairs and tables and walls. But as it keeps going around, it'll learn the layout of your home so it can more efficiently clean it, which is a type of artificial intelligence. Assistive AI appears as accessibility tools and fall detection apps, which are mainly used to support people with disabilities. And so here, it'll be tools that are really catered to whatever needs you might have and can also make predictions. So, for example, smartwatches have a feature, not all of them, but quite a lot of them do. And if you fall, they'll detect that and then make a call to an emergency service if you need. And finally, recommendation AI is similar to predictive AI, where these predictions are based on your interests. So YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, Google, all of these suggest content based on what you have looked for before. And so what their algorithm or their program thinks you would find interesting to see, listen, or read. Part of the reason, as I mentioned, that AI is so popular is that it brings a lot of benefits. AI uses basically all the information that's out there. And I'm talking for here AI like ChatGPT, which you can talk to and get information. It uses basically everything online to inform it about a bunch of various topics that when you ask it a question, it has insight into very, very specific or niche topics that might be otherwise hard to find. So if you're looking for a very specific product that is hard to find in stores, you can ask ChatGPT where you might be able to buy it, and it can do quite a good job of digging through all the listings online and seeing where might be the best place for you to buy something. It also has a very broad range of knowledge. So I don't even know a single question you can ask AI that I won't be able to come up with some sort of answer for you. Again, it can make mistakes, but in a lot of cases, it does have pretty good insight into things. And so while I may not be entirely correct, it at least has some amount of knowledge in basically anything you might ask it. AI can become very personalized to you. So if I were talking with ChatGPT and I ask it a question about something I'm knowledgeable in, the first time it might give me a very basic response that it would give to anybody. But if I were to tell it, hey, ChatGPT, I'm quite knowledgeable in this topic, so you don't have to give me a basic answer. You can give me a more advanced one. The next time I ask it, it'll take this into account and give me a more specific response to my question. Some specific uses that I think are quite powerful with AI. One are health monitoring tools. So this is specifically for smartwatches. A lot of them have AI built in, so they can give you more specific insights about your health based on the amount of steps that you take, your activity level, your heart rate, and so on. Accessibility aids, things like smart hubs. So these are things like Amazon Alexas or Google Nest hubs, which if anybody is curious about, we will talk about after. We're also, I forgot to mention, doing a giveaway for one of these today, so we'll give more information about that afterwards. But these are devices that you can control with your voice, which is very, very useful if you have limited mobility or are otherwise occupied and can't use your hands with your phone. And also identifying frauds and
That's
scams.
same guy as last week, doing the same thing to us. Last week's not this week.
I'm sorry, was there a question?
I think it was just someone that was off mute. I did put them on mute. If you do have a question, though, please feel free to unmute.
And then, yeah, so as I was saying, I've gotten on my phone potential scam alerts on my phone. So if there's a number that calls me based on the certain patterns that my provider has found previously, or my phone can detect that this is probably going to be spam, and so it'll mark it as such. Despite all the benefits that AI provides, there's also a number of risks that AI brings with it that are very, very important to know before you use it to ensure that you stay as safe as possible. The first of these is fake information, or sometimes called hallucinations. Essentially, AI has a risk of making things up. And this is quite unfortunate, but um, the way it's designed is that it works really hard to give you an answer. And sometimes that can be translated as just any answer, correct or not. I think lately it has gotten a little bit better at admitting when it doesn't know something. So there's less of a tendency to give you an incorrect answer. But still be wary of the fact that sometimes AI might make something up and sound very, very confident in its knowledge of that topic where it doesn't really know it. It sometimes may just be a misunderstanding on its part, so it misinterprets certain information in the incorrect way. So, for example, it might struggle to pick up sarcasm. So, if you ask a question that's been discussed online by somebody and AI relies on that answer, if there's some sort of sarcasm or irony used in that answer, AI might not pick up on it and give that as a real answer rather than, someone being, more joking or sarcastic about it. With generative AI, which is the type of AI that creates images and videos, there's a risk of things called deep fakes, which are videos or images that are made to look like a real human being doing something that they never did. And I have a picture of Mark Carney on here because this is one that I see quite often, and it's an ad on YouTube or a bunch of different ads on YouTube where Mark Carney is promising some sort of lucrative financial scheme or some benefit that people can claim. And it does look very, very realistic. If I have a video later, hopefully it'll work, where it looks like Mark Carney talking and moving around, but it is a computer generated video of him. There's also voice scams where there's the potential for scammers to record your voice and then have you say things that you never did, and use that to scam other people. There are concerns for data privacy. The main thing here is that when you talk to AI, any sort of information that you give it gets sent off to the company's servers. That's how a lot of these online programs work. So if I were to tell it any sort of information, that is instantly sent to their computers in California or wherever it is. And I've essentially given up my right to privacy over that information. So it's similar to posting on Facebook. So you're sort of giving it away. Now, it's unlikely that anybody will ever really read every single one of your messages that you had with AI. It's highly, highly unlikely because of the sheer amount of people who use it. But it is just important to know that you are releasing that information. So be very careful about the sorts of things that you share with AI and know that as soon as you type it in and hit send, you've given up your right to privacy for that information. There is the potential for bias. AI uses human-generated information. So it is only as good as the information it reads. And so if it relies on a lot of biased sources, its response will be biased as well. Thankfully, lately, a lot of AI services have implemented a feature where when it gives you a response, especially when you're looking for certain information, it'll tell you where it got the information from. And so you can check how reputable is the source where it got it from. So if you look up maybe about a news story, you can see if it uses a more reputable source, like the Toronto Star or the BBC or one of these well-known ones, versus if it uses maybe a more biased or less accurate news source for its answer. And the last thing is over-reliance. Um, this is a risk factor for a certain, maybe some people, but not others, where it's very tempting to use AI for a lot of different things. And the lesson here is just to be careful about what sorts of things you use AI for and how much you use it. And just to remember that you ultimately are the final decision maker, so you decide how to act on the information that AI gives you and to still retain your agency. So you are in charge of your own behavior and your thoughts, and to remember that AI is just a tool that helps you in this rather than AI telling you what to think. So I have a couple videos. I'm just going to share one, and it's the Mark Carney scam. So hopefully this will work. I'll turn off the audio because it might not carry well, but I just want you to look at the video of him talking and moving around. And missing opportunities. And those who take action, they wake up every day and see money appearing in their accounts like clockwork. Imagine $500 a day automatically deposited into your account. No stress, no schedules, no deadlines. Just a smarter way to build your future. And the best part? This isn't a temporary thing. It's not a trial version. It's a lifetime income stream. So that's just part of the video there. Oops. Much to. So I want to talk a little bit about detecting AI generated videos. Does anybody want to share if they saw anything that looked off in that video?
I don't know. His mouth was moving and it looked like it was in sync with the words, but he never seemed to look at the camera.
Yeah, so that was a little bit off. Anything else anybody noticed?
No.
So this one is this video is much harder to detect. There was one other that I sometimes show, and it is an older one, which it's not as relevant anymore now, but in older AI generated videos, the mouth movements did not match up to what was being said, and it looked unnatural. This video, if I was just casually watching and not really thinking about it, I would not detect that it was AI. Um, I think the my overall sort of tip here is that if you see any YouTube ad of Mark Carney or a different politician or celebrity offering a lucrative, scheme that will make you lots of money, it is pretty much always a scam. So I would just ignore those. So AI is becoming more and more popular or powerful every single day and is getting harder and harder to detect AI generated content. So there unfortunately isn't any perfect solution and nothing I can give you that will give you 100% ability to detect AI generated content. But there are a couple things that you can look out for to try to be more aware of it. So one is a mismatch between what their mouth is doing, what they're saying. Again, these are becoming less and less prevalent, but sometimes if it does look a little bit unnatural, especially the way the mouth moves, that can be an indicator that this may be AI generated. Another indicator is sometimes if there's a cut in the video, but not in the audio. So if the person suddenly switches positions, so if maybe they're looking to the left and suddenly it cuts and they're looking to the right, but no cut in the audio happens, that's another telltale sign for AI generated content. You might sometimes see unnatural movements or behavior. So Joan, like you said, not making eye contact. That's an interesting one. I didn't even notice that before. But any sort of movements that just don't seem really human might be a good indicator. And for this, it sometimes isn't anything you can really point to specifically. So you might, if I were to ask you, what seemed off about it, you might not be able to indicate any one specific thing, but in general, more of a feeling that just something was off about it, but you can't really tell what.
Can
This
I
is what,
ask,
yes, yeah, of course.
have you seen a 25-minute long video that's supposedly Warren Buffett speaking to camera,
No, I haven't.
and saying how angry Canadians are with Americans? And I looked at it, and at first I thought, oh, wow, that's great that he said all this. And then I thought, I wonder if this is AI.
Yeah. So for that, it was it on YouTube?
No, somebody sent it to me, and
Right. So on YouTube, or if you watch it in some official source, you can see, for example, if it was from Warren Buffett's real YouTube account, that's a
Mhm.
good indicator that it was real. But the
Ah,
problem is a lot of what we see is things that get sent around on WhatsApp or on
yeah.
text, Facebook, and there's no source to those videos. And so those are very, very vulnerable to being AI
Yeah.
videos. Yeah. Um, One other thing is an unsettling appearance or something called uncanny valley. And this is when somebody looks, some sort of computer generated imagery looks almost like a real person, but just something is off about it. And you can't really tell what. And it often makes people feel quite uncomfortable. Um, so the most common example for this that I hear a lot is the early 2000s movie Polar Express. If anybody has seen it, the characters there, the animation makes them look very, very lifelike, but just a little bit off. And I think a lot of people are unsettled by the way it looks. So with some AI generated stuff, there's this element of it being just a little bit robotic looking. And so if you get the sense, sometimes that might indicate that this is AI as well. And the last one that I have is impossible scenes. So sometimes you might get people shape-shifting in videos or just having weird anatomy, like the wrong number of fingers or just a weirdly like different proportion to their bodies. These are sometimes hard to notice and they might be in the background. Um, but this can sometimes happen if AI learns from the example that I give is sometimes you might see a video where somebody's leg morphs into the leg of the chair they're sitting on, for example. So sometimes it's the chair leg, sometimes it's their leg, and it kind of keeps switching. This is because it probably was the AI learned from videos where people were sitting on a chair and it was hard to tell if it was their leg or the chair leg in that video. And so that translates to this sort of weird shape shifting in the AI generated content. And a lot of videos that I see now, when I find out that they're AI, another tip is to look in the background of the video and see what the people not in focus are doing. So there might be action happening in the middle of the video that your eyes are drawn to, and that might look perfect. So, 99 out of 100 observers would be unable to tell that it's AI. But what you should look out for is what's in the background. You might see people with, two people side by side with the same face, but everything else is different, or people are just standing unnaturally still and nothing's happening, or they're again shape-shifting. So look in the background as well of the video if you want to tell. And sometimes it'll be weird, like if like I see pictures of there's a community online of people posting their woodworking projects. And so there was one image of somebody who built a crib, and the crib looks perfect, like very realistic. And the guy standing beside it who made it looks very realistic. But there's a bunch of tools in the background, and they don't look like any real human tools that anybody's ever seen. So there's all these weird double-headed drills and hammers that kind of have blobs on the end and all this sort of weird stuff. So that's one more thing to look out for. But because there is no perfect solution, so some videos will not have any of these signs, it is important to now, unfortunately, keep in mind that basically anything we see online that is we don't know that it's from a credible source, so it's not, from somebody's official channel. It's impossible to know if it's real or not. So it's very difficult, but there just is no way to 100% know if it's AI or not. I want to give everybody a couple tips for using AI safely. If you're ever using AI to find information, always double check it, especially if it's important. So financial related, health related, anything like that. The AI can be a good first stop to finding some things out, but it's always good to double check with sources that you know are trusted. Avoid sharing any personal information, things like your social insurance number, addresses, passwords, and so on. Some people use AI to look at their health scan, so they might get an X-ray and they'll upload the image of it to AI to maybe see if it can find anything. This is sometimes people do this not as replacement to a doctor, but to get a second opinion almost and see if there's anything that the doctor might have missed. If you do anything like that, make sure that when you upload the scan, you remove your personal information. So you upload just the scan, nothing else. Either cut out or censor your name, your health card number, and so on. So that stuff isn't being uploaded. If you're unsure what to do or how to act on the information that you were given, check with someone else. The sort of rule of, two heads are better than one really applies here. Somebody with more knowledge or just a different outlook on things can give you more insight into how to act on some of these things. This is a tip I put in many months ago when I made this presentation that is now harder and harder to do, but learn to recognize AI generated content. So next time you find out that a video is AI, really take a close look at it and see what's going on in the video. What do some of the things look like? What are people doing in the background? A lot of images that are made by ChatGPT have a very similar art style. So after seeing a couple images and learning that it was made by ChatGPT, I was able to pretty accurately recognize when it was AI generated, but only for that specific art style. This is also getting harder and harder, but try to stay up to date with innovations. So read about AI and see what it can do. And every few months, just check up on how things are advancing. So read about what AI can do today that it couldn't do a month ago or 2 months ago, just so that you're aware of what sorts of things to keep an eye out for when trying to detect AI generated content. So, having talked about the risks, I want to talk about a couple forms of AI that can help you at home. The first is voice assistants. So, as I mentioned, these are things like Google Home, Siri, Alexa, and so on that you can talk to. These are particularly beneficial for seniors and survivors of brain injury because they allow you to interact and get help without having to move as much. This is beneficial again if you have any mobility restrictions, or if you're otherwise your hands are busy, you can talk to it and get information. It is also beneficial for if you've had a fall. Some assistants can call emergency services for you, whereas other ones can call an emergency contact, like a child or a spouse who can then reach out to emergency services. For those that are very techy here, there are smart home devices. So these are things like smart lights, plugs, and thermostats. The smart in the name essentially means that they can connect to your phone, and so you can kind of integrate everything together. So, for example, a smart plug, I can connect to my phone and I can control it on and off from my phone, and I can set schedules. So, if I were, example, to put a plug into the wall and to plug a lamp into it, I can then put a schedule that the plug turns on at a certain time and turns off at a certain time. So you can have it turn on when you come home and turn off before you go to bed. And so this will allow you to have things be a little bit more automated. Setting reminders and alarms, those are a type of AI. So having reminders for taking medications or for appointments that you have coming up. This is particularly beneficial. I'm somebody who forgets things a lot. I also have a lot of different meetings and appointments every single day, so I would not be able to remember everything without having them set in my calendar. So this is something I find very, very beneficial. There's also certain safety devices. So as I mentioned, fall detection watches, which if you fall down, will prompt you to call emergency services. And if you are unable to or don't respond, some of them will place the call automatically, which is a great safety feature. There's also video doorbells, which have a camera, so they will record whoever it is that's coming up to your home. Will allow you to look out so you don't have to open the door to see who's there, but can also record things in the event of any safety concerns. So I want to talk a little bit about fall detection specifically. So there are certain models of smartwatches, which are the watches that have a screen, kind of like mine. Some of them will have built-in fall detection. So some of the models that include this are Apple Watches, so Series 9, the SE and Ultra 2, the Google Pixel Watch 3, and the Samsung Galaxy Watches 7 and 8. These are some models that do have this emergency fall detection. So if you're somebody who's worried about falling and not being able to reach out for help, I would highly, highly recommend considering getting a smartwatch. These are an excellent tool for reaching out and getting help if you need. And the idea here is you might not always have your phone on you, but you're more likely to be wearing your watch. And so that's something you can reach for and get. And again, if you fall and are unable to place the call or unconscious, some of these models will automatically place the call if you don't respond within a minute or 30 seconds. AI can also be used for health and wellness. So there are fitness apps. So if you have a Samsung, there's Samsung Health. I know Apple has their equivalent as well that will track your steps, give you personalized workout suggestions, and track your exercise. So this is excellent for if you're trying to be a bit more active or to just kind of get insight into how active you're being. These can be very, very great for keeping that sort of stuff in mind. A lot of people use AI to manage their health, which is a good use, but I just want to make sure that everybody does it responsibly. So if you do use AI in any sort of health related thing, I would say that it should supplement and not replace doctor's visits. So if you use it to get any health recommendations, this should only function as a second opinion that you can consider more alternatives or as a pre-step to visiting the doctor. So if your doctor's visit is scheduled for a very long time from now, you can use AI to at least get a sense of what certain issues might be. But I would be very, very careful about drawing conclusions from it, but especially from taking action on its suggestions. So what I would avoid is getting AI to give you tips on how to cure certain conditions or to deal with certain symptoms, unless it's something mild like a headache and it suggests, putting a cold compress on. Anything more extreme than that, I'd be very careful about taking the advice, since it isn't a doctor and it can't be held liable for any sort of misinformation that it gives you. One thing I think is a good use for AI in the health field is to organize your symptoms. So if you are experiencing some constellation of symptoms over a long period of time, you can use AI like a diary and say, today I had these symptoms. And then the next day you record the symptoms you felt that day. After a while, it'll get a sense of your patterns of symptoms, and you can ask it to generate a summary of the sorts of things you've been experiencing over the last few weeks or months to then bring to a doctor. And this is better than anything you could, if the doctor were to ask you, it'd be hard to remember on which day you had which symptoms and how often they were. But AI is great at keeping track of it and then noticing patterns from that. And then finally, you can use AI to get information about resources that are out there. So you could have it look up a variety of clinics or doctors and give you a more informed decision about what to go with. And finally, there's a variety of apps that provide brain games or various cognitive supports that some people report as being beneficial to either their mental acuity or just their mental wellness, which I can talk about afterwards if anybody is curious. I sometimes get the question, can AI help with memory? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So apart from just improving your memory, it can also be used as a support. So as I said, setting repeating reminders or just reminders for your various events is an excellent use for a lot of online services. There's often reminders apps on your phone, or if you have a calendar that you use, like Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, these you can write down what the event is, and it'll give you a notification to let you know that it's coming up to prevent you from forgetting about various commitments. You can have it organize a daily routine. So, for example, if you have a lot of things you need to get done that day, you can go to an AI service like ChatGPT and say, I need to get all of this done today. Give me a schedule on how I can do this. It can be very overwhelming if you have a lot of errands to run or a lot of tasks to do. And you have one more step is just trying to figure it all out. AI can give you a schedule that you can then stick to and follow to help with some of the anxiety around figuring it all out at once. And as I mentioned, it can also help you plan and remember various tasks, either through the reminders or through helping you organize a daily routine. Another benefit is if you're writing, sometimes it is hard to get all your thoughts together when you're typing, and it's easier to talk. So I recommend using speech-to-text features if you find this is the case. Microsoft Word has a dictation function where it looks like a little microphone, and if you tap on it, it'll listen to what you say and write it down. And also, if you're ever texting, a lot of texting services have a speech-to-text function as well, which can be beneficial either if you have joint pain, but also if it's hard for you to get your thoughts in writing when you type and you find that speaking is easier. With AI, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do, and it can be kind of hard to get started because there's just so much that you can do with AI. So a couple useful prompts that might get you started if you want to use it. Here are some things you can ask. For example, if you want to do something this weekend, you can ask, what are some events happening in the community this weekend? And if it knows that you live somewhere in KW or Cambridge or Guelph or wherever you are located, It'll give you a list of events that are happening in the city that weekend, and it'll just pull together info from a bunch of different pages. So it'll look at, for example, if you're in Guelph, it'll look at the city's website, it'll look at their Instagram page, it'll look at some local businesses' Facebook pages, and pull together a list of what's happening. If you're looking at buying something, especially tech devices like a phone or an iPad, but even something like a desk or a couch, you can ask it to compare two versions of what you want to buy. So if you're stuck between two models of a phone and you really don't know which one to pick, AI can give you a breakdown of one versus the other. But then you can also ask, which is better for me if I want to do so and so. So if you say, I want a phone that has really good battery life, or you can even say, I'm a senior. What phone would be best for me based on whatever it is that you are looking for? It'll give you a very personalized layout of a comparison between two devices, or it can just suggest a device for you. Here's a great start for a lot of you is you can just ask AI, explain what AI is to a senior, and it'll probably do an even better job than I did at explaining what it is and how to use it. And if it gives you a response that's too technologically advanced, it uses a lot of weird jargon that is very specific, you can ask it again and say, please use simpler terms. Or if you want a more advanced description, if you are already quite knowledgeable about this and you want a more in-depth response, you can ask for that too. So this is one thing I really want to emphasize is that AI can really be personalized to you. So if it gives you a response that you aren't satisfied with, ask it again and ask it to change how it gave you the response. Last thing I want to talk about is some AI myths and facts. The first myth is that AI knows everything and never makes mistakes. From what I talked about today, I hope you all know that AI does make mistakes, especially with complex questions. It doesn't really understand things like we do. It doesn't experience them in real life, and so it just makes guesses based on the data that it has. So be always careful to double check information, especially when it's important. Another myth is that AI is dangerous and uncontrollable. AI can be misused, and we see it in a lot of frauds and scams where AI is used to facilitate those frauds and scams. But ultimately, it is controlled by rules, programming, and human oversight. So the apocalyptic view that some people have of AI taking over the world is thankfully not a reality, at least not at this stage. Um, and governments and companies are making laws and safeguards to make AI safer. Um, and so these are constantly being monitored and very, very carefully regulated. Another thing I've heard quite often is I'm too old to use or understand AI. It's only for young people. This is absolutely a myth. AI can be quite daunting and it can be a little bit hard to get into it at first. But hopefully, going to presentations like this one can shed a bit of light on it. And I would say start small and you can kind of get a feel for it. And then if you like it, you can keep using it. If not, you don't have to. But a lot of AI tools are designed specifically to help older adults. So things like fall detection, medication reminders, voice assistants, and so on can help you support your independence and support you as a senior specifically. If you want to gain confidence in using AI, I'd recommend, as I said, to start small. So start with, trivial or small tasks. So if you want to ask a question, ask about what's going on in the community today, or ask it for a recipe for something to cook for dinner. Once you get the hang of it, you can try new things. If you are confused for where to start, ask for help. We'll have a question period at the end of this session today, but also ask your friends, ask other tech experts if you know any for help with how to use it. And there's no shame at learning at any age. And remember that you are in control. AI does what you tell it to do, not the other way around. You can always reject the information it gives you or not listen to its suggestions. It is ultimately up to you. And you don't have to know everything to use it. You should be aware of the risks, which hopefully I've covered well today. But you don't have to know everything to start using it. All right, that is all I have for today. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to stop the recording and then we can ask questions.